Step by step.
Добрый вечер.
Good morning. Good morning. So who here has noticed that who, what, and where we are influenced by has changed just a little bit over the past few years? Yeah, some hands, yeah. And probably more importantly than that, who here has noticed that who, what, and where are influencing our customers, the people we're trying to reach, has changed over the last few years? Yeah. Now, as Jill so kindly said, I first arrived in this country about 15 years ago, and I arrived with a backpack full of completely unsuitable clothes for 40-degree weather, 4 woolly hats, have no idea why, and I got here and no one was talking about influence at that stage. No one was talking about thought leaders, no one was talking about influencers, no one was talking about dancing cats, that's for sure. And now it's everywhere, isn't it? Like, today it is everywhere. And it gets me thinking, videos like that get me thinking, and the question that I think about is, what does it take in these days, in these times, with so much noise, so many things to cut through, so many platforms, what does it take to stand out as an influencer? And that question's kept me really busy over the last 15 years. When I first arrived to now, I ended up starting with a business partner, a management company for thought leaders and for influencers. And what we did was we represented, developed, and promoted speakers. Speakers, thought leaders, media personalities, authors, some of these amazing individuals you have seen on these stages in previous years, one of which I know you're going to see today, and they are incredible, incredible people. And in doing that, in those 15 years having to figure this out, we had to decode it. What makes an influencer? We had to decode the question, because we had to be able to break it down, we had to be able to replicate it, we had to be able to scale it here and in other countries. And so we had to get really good at it. And in doing that first, as you know, with anything, we first had to get it really wrong a few times, but eventually we did get good at it. And we did break it down. And we learned a lot. And before I give you the answers to what we learned, I want to do, sorry, my mic's moving a wee bit. I'm going to do a quick pop quiz. You ready? Ready for a pop quiz? Here we go. You will be graded, just so you know. Who's this? Anyone tell me who this is? Oh, come on, this is the first one. No? All right, here we go. Who's this? Oh, but it's Oprah. It's Oprah. Love Oprah. Next one. Who's this? No? Who's that? It's Jamie. Fellow countryman. Who's this one? Pardon? Who got that? Hand up. Oh my goodness, I love you. Hang on, we'll come back to that answer in a second. Who's this? Richard Branson. All right, final one. Final chance to redeem yourself. Who's this? Who's this? Steve Jobs. All right, so the first person that you saw there that you didn't know, her name is Susan Wojcicki. Now, Susan Wojcicki is the CEO of YouTube. She's the CEO of YouTube. Now, she is the most powerful woman in media today, as it stands at the moment. And yet you didn't know who she was. The next person that we had was Michael Brass. Michael Brass is the most celebrated chef in the world, as voted by his peers. And you didn't know who he was. The next one we had is my favorite human being on the planet, with this gentleman so rightly got. His name is Amancio Ortega. Now, any ladies in this room is going to know this. He is the CEO and founder of Zara. How much are you glad that that man was born? Now, Amancio Ortega, he is worth $70 billion. He is the richest businessman on the planet. Now, on a scale of billionaires, he's up here. Richard Branson, he's at cornflakes level. $3 billion, you know, he's struggling down there. And this is Tim Berners-Lee. He's the reason we're here. He invented the internet. And you don't know who he is. Now that just intrigues me and has for years intrigued me as to why that is. And it tells us a lot. And firstly, it tells me what influence isn't. And this is really important. What influence isn't. Influence isn't dollars in the bank. It's not the amount of money that you have in your marketing budget. It's not the amount of cash that you have to spend. That's really obvious. Second thing that influence isn't is it's not years in the game. It's not tenure, how long you've been doing this. And third thing that influence isn't is it isn't force. It isn't aggression, it isn't being an extrovert. In fact, I can tell you firsthand, those people that you recognize, they're introverts. And so if it's not any of those things, then what is it? That's a genuine question, by the way. And I'm coming down. I need to talk to you. What is it? What are all those people that you recognized? I can see you properly now. What are all those people that you recognize? What do they have in common? Anyone tell me? Anyone that hangs out with me will tell you it's a full contact sport. Yes?
They make you feel something.
They make you feel something. Absolutely. They give off an emotional energy. What else? What else do they all have in common? Sorry?
Provider service.
Provider service, thank you. There was another one. They serve. Perfect. Anything else? One more thing. What else do they all have in common? An idea. They choose to be public. Absolutely. They've made a choice to go out there into the public sphere and share what they've come here to give you. Visibility, yeah. So yes to all that, all those things. But I want to put it to you that if you take all those things and you just lift it up a level, just elevate it a little bit, I want to put it to you that the reason you recognized all those people is because we are at the beginnings of a new age of influence. And they have all taken advantage of this new age. And in this new age of influence, which we are literally just at the beginnings at right now, literally at the beginnings, with the first 5 years or so. And in this new age, you can now connect, engage, and mobilize millions of people in terrifyingly short periods of time. And if you wanted to, you could start your own TV channel, if you so chose. It would take you a couple of minutes to do that. Jump on YouTube, start your own TV channel. If you wanted to start a podcast like I have your own radio show. Again, it'll take you 5 minutes to set it up, a little while longer to do it, but 5 minutes to set it up. Or if you wanted to start your own blog, you saw how many blogs were written just since last night. The world of influence has changed, and what has changed it is digital. Now, I know you're probably all, very used, hang on, I think my mic, we're back. You're probably all very used to hearing the words that digital has changed the game, right? And I've heard it 1,000 times, but I can tell you in my world it really has. In my world, it's genuinely flipped the entire thing on its head. And in order to tell you why, I'm going to do a very brief, I promise, very brief history lesson as to why that is. Before the internet, before the digital world, before our digitized selves, this is what power looked like. This is what influence looked like. This is what my world looked like. At the top, you had monarchy, the governments, the powers that be. Underneath that, you had the military. Underneath that, you had the media. They basically disseminated out any information that the powers that be thought that we should or would know. And underneath that, you had you and me, general public. And it's looked like that for hundreds of years. And now, in the past 5 years, something amazing has happened for the first time in human history. It's flipped on its head. Human beings are now at the top. And that's never happened before. Never happened before. If you want to get a message out there, if you want to start a movement, you can get it out there in 24 hours or less, in 280 characters or less if you use Twitter. And that is incredible. The game of attention has completely changed. And that's why I think that it's one of the most exciting times for us all to be in business today. Who's this? This is our next game, pop quiz. There's a little whisper. Who's not prepared to admit that they know who that is? It's Justin Bieber. It's the Biebs. No shame in that. So that's Justin Bieber. Now, Justin Bieber on one channel, just Twitter. Bear in mind, there's 52 social channels now, as of today. On one channel, He has a whopping 120 million followers. Now, Barack Obama, 90 million followers. Donald Trump, 30 million followers. Now, here's what's interesting. CNN, most powerful media channels on the planet, 50 million followers. So if he decided on his yacht tomorrow at 2 a.m. sipping Bollinger off the coast of somewhere fabulous, that he was going to get an idea or a product or a message out there, he could get it out there faster and with more engagement than CNN. And again, that has never happened before. So you might not want to be a teenage pop sensation, and if you do, more power to you. Come find me afterwards, we'll put together a plan and we'll work it out. But if you don't, and if you're more like me and you're more interested in business and how you can own and maintain market share, then this one's probably more interesting to you. 96%. 96% of everything that we consume on the internet is unbranded. And what do I mean by unbranded? I mean it is not associated with a brand. When you woke up this morning and you got out your iPhone, you scrolled and you looked at feeds and you read some stuff and articles, and 96% of what you looked at has nothing to do with a brand at all. It's by humans. It's written by humans. And we spend 8.5 hours a day now consuming content. 8.5 hours a day. If you're Gen Z, it's 10.6 hours a day. When anyone's getting any work done, I have no idea. That's a different presentation. So if we spend 8.5 hours a day reading content, and only 4% of it comes from brands, 4% of the information that informs all of our decisions, 93% of our buying decisions are now influenced by social. And if that is the case, then how's this? $50 billion we spend a year on marketing, branding, and advertising globally as industries. $50 billion. And no one's looking. No one is looking. It's like building the world's most expensive billboard and putting it under the ocean. Because what we're paying attention to, what we're looking at, who we're following, who we are influenced by, is people. People follow people. The internet has just enabled us to live out our most basic human driver, and that is that we follow people. We don't follow brands. Now, that doesn't make brands irrelevant. In fact, it's quite the opposite, which we'll go into. However, that fundamental shift, as an industry that is driven by the connective networking power of human beings, should be the best news you have received all decade. It's an incredible opportunity. So, how do we take advantage of that opportunity? As I said, in the time working with influencers, working with thought leaders, we have broken it down into a number of key areas that you need to nail in order to become an influencer in your space. These are 5 of those that we're going to cover today. We're also, as Jill mentioned, we're going to bring on 2 incredible ladies who are out there in the digital world doing incredible things. Social selling, social field posting, some amazing things. So we're going to deep dive with them. But for now, we're going to start with clarity. Is everyone ready? If you're going to own a space, you better get really clear on the space that you want to own. Really clear. Now, when I first started out in this world, you could own what's called a macro space. You could own a massive space. You could be the guru of leadership. You could be the guru of work-life balance. You could be the guru of beauty. And that was only 10 years ago, and it was relatively simple to do because the platform belonged to very few people. Only very few people had a voice. Now, everybody has a voice, and you can't do that anymore. You need to be what I would call a micro-influencer. Now is the world of micro-influence. And what micro-influence is hyper-specialization. You need to find a space, hyper-specialized space, where I know exactly what you do and I know exactly where to find you, and that is the space that you own. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to get you to do a bit of a task, because it's first thing in the morning, kinda. I want you to pick up your mobile phones. I want you to turn to the person next to you. I want you just to nod at them, just kind of creepily. Nod. Was that a creepy nod? Good. Creepy nod. This is your new buddy. And what I want you to do is I want you to, hold on a second, I want you to get their name. Then I don't want you to say anything else. And I want you to pick up your phone and I want you to Google them. And I want you to share what you find. I'm going to give you a minute. So Googling each other and then quickly sharing what you find. This is always interesting. Okay, so who here was pleased with what their partner found? Yeah, okay, 1, 2, few more. Okay, a few more. Jill, very pleased. I haven't Googled Jill recently. I will do. All right, so who here was a bit like, meh, it was all right, but it wasn't exactly what I would want? Yep, some honest people. Who here couldn't be found at all? Who here was very surprised to find that they were a pole dancer living in Texas? You laugh, it has happened. So why did we do that? We did that because that's what's happening to the consultants and associates that work within your organizations every day, multiple times a day. It's called the digital interview. And according to Harvard University, we now base a massive percentage of our decisions on this digital interview, on what we find when we Google you. And so what we're looking for is we're looking for this hyper-specialization. We're looking for you to own your space. We're looking to make sure that what you do exactly is exactly who I am or what I need. And when I say exactly, I mean exactly. It's not enough to say you just work in insurance anymore. It's not enough to say that you just work in finance anymore. You just work for a bank. What do you specialize in? Who are you? Whose world do you know better than anybody else's? And so how you find that is actually relatively easy. How you equip the people that work with you to find it is actually relatively easy. And the way that you do it is this. It's what I would call an influence intersection. And that is where you take the tools, mastery, and experience of one space that you can own, and you overlay it with the tools, mastery, and experience from another space that you know that you can own. And that space in the middle, that's a space where you stand out. That's the space where you stand out. That's a space you can own. So I'll give you an example. Let's take Jamie, for example. He came about at a time when there was a lot of chefs. There was a lot of TV chefs. But he knew that world, right? He was a chef. He knew cooking. But what he also knew is he knew families. He knew families with young kids. He knew families that were trying to feed their families on a budget in a healthy way. He knew that. You overlay those two spaces and he stood out. Let's take Steve Jobs, another one from the beginnings. Steve Jobs, he knew computers, he knew engineering, but then so did IBM and so did Microsoft. And he overlaid that with something else that he knew, that he loved, which was creativity and being a maverick and an innovator. Overlaid the two in that space there, that's how Apple stood out. So these influence intersection is how you start to own a micro-authority. It's how you start to own your space. Now, I probably don't need to introduce her. Who knows who she is? For you? This is Jessica Heron. She is the founder and CEO of Stellar & Dot. Now, Stellar & Dot is a direct selling company in the States, relatively new, I think, in the legacy of things. And she made two amazing decisions when she started Stellar & Dot. The first decision that she made is that she was going to hyper-specialize. So she was going to go for mothers who needed flexible incomes and who had an entrepreneurial spirit, number one. Number two, they had to have an interest in fashion and jewelry, over the top here. And then she also added in another one. This second decision that she made the decision that this company was going to be socially fueled. This is her language, socially fueled. So you had to have an interest in social media. This video I found, about a 30-minute video, where she's talking about, she's introducing her daughter. She actually doesn't talk about the products really at all. She talks about the opportunity, she talks about why she started it, she talks about the journey that she's had with it. This video, 19,000 views. Yes, we all view things that we do nothing about sometimes. 19,000 views. But look at this, 162 comments. Most of those comments, if you look at them, are people going, such and such, check this out, sending it out to their friends. You should check this out. This would be perfect for you. You should see this. This is amazing. But here's the really good bit. 97,000 shares. 97,000. Now, most people have about 500 contacts on their Facebook. That's 50 million people on a free channel. Free channel. That's what I'm saying. This new age of influence, it is not the dollars that you have in your marketing budget anymore, which is good news for all of us and very good news for your consultants and associates. Now, probably what she did with this afterwards, I am imagining, I couldn't find any evidence of it, but she's a smart lady, I'm assuming she would. She probably then put it out on Facebook, and using Facebook advertising algorithms, she probably said, look, I want this to go to women of a certain age, living in a certain area, who have an interest in this kind of jewelry, who have liked this page before. Hyper targeted. Hyper specialization, hyper targeting. Now that's clarity. That is clarity, and that is when you stand out. That's when you cut through the noise. So if we're going to stand out, so we figured out who we want to talk to, we figured out where their eyes and ears are, then what do we do from there? Then we get into contribution. Then we've got to contribute like there's no tomorrow. In fact, I'd like you to write this down, because there's nothing I say today other than this. I want you to have got it. The future belongs to those who out-contribute and not those who outspend their competitors. Future belongs to those who out-contribute and not who outspend their competitors. Because as we've said, all the channels are free, all the most effective channels at this point of time, they are free. They're free and available. And traditionally what we have done as marketers, and I've been in business now for nearly 20 years, and traditionally what you do is you outspend, you outshout, and you out-interrupt everybody else, right? That's the basic marketing model when you boil it down. And who here just loves being interrupted? Just like loves it. You love it when you sat down and then the phone rings and it's a telemarketer. Or you love it when you're watching your favorite show and it gets to the crux of it and they're just about to kiss and then there's an ad break. Or that classic one when you go on a website when you're actually interested in the content and then all these pop-ups start popping up. You know, we love being interrupted. We love it. And yet there's an entire industry predicated, $50 billion, as we've already talked about, $50 billion predicated on out-interrupting everybody else, out-shouting everybody else. And it's no longer the most effective method. Now we need to out-contribute everybody else. I'm going to do another. I'm a bit keen on experiments. So what I want you to do for this one is I want you to have a think about everybody that's in your network. This is going to be an interesting room to do this in. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, contacts on your phone, basically your own network. I want you to have a think about it. Just a rough number in your head. Put it all in a bowl. Rough number in your head as to how many, maybe to the nearest 100. It doesn't have to be exact, doesn't have to be perfect. Have you all got a rough number? Yeah? All right, I want you to put your hand up if it's 100 or above. Okay, great. Keep your hand up. Keep your hand up. Now, keep your hand up if it's 500 or above. Keep your hand up if it's 1,000 or above. Hand up if it's 2,000 or above. 3,000 or above. 5,000 or above. 10,000 or above. 20,000 or above. Okay, this is a pretty well-connected room. I'm impressed. So that's interesting, but here's the killer question for this one. When was the last time you contributed to any of them? And by contributed, I don't mean liked something that they did or shared what you had for breakfast. I mean contributed your ideas, knowledge, and insight to any of them. Now, you don't have to answer that question out loud, and I'm sure for a few of you in the room the answer is always. But I would say that for the majority of people, the answer is rarely. We rarely contribute our ideas. We rarely contribute our insights. If we share things, we tend to just press share rather than overlaying our own words on top of it, because to do that, to overlay our own words, it feels kind of vulnerable, right? To do that. So I want to put it to you, I think that we've got a bit of a collection addiction going on. As brands, as people, as salespeople, as entrepreneurs, I think we've got this collection addiction. You remember when you were a kid, I don't know, it was baseball cards here, or was it cricket cards? You used to collect the cards. You were like, I got that one, I got that one, I got that one, I got that one, I need that one, can you swap that one? Thanks, I've got that one. And then you'd have a full set. And you put it in your back pocket and you kind of feel a bit smug about it. That was just me? It was just me. And I think we do that with people now. I think we do that with contacts. I think some of your consultants and associates probably do this. You get as many contacts as you can, and they sit there. And you feel very well connected. You feel like you've done your job. And actually, there's no engagement. It's just collection. And what happens with that is we miss out on a massive opportunity. I actually did quite a lot of research. Thanks to Jill, she put me in touch with some amazing people in your industry, and I did some phone interviews before this presentation to make sure that the information was as tailored to you as I could possibly make it. And one of the messages that came out again and again, we're talking to the top performers in your world, was network size. You don't need a massive network. You need an engaged network. Far rather have 500 exceptionally engaged people who will share what you do, shout about what you do, read everything you do, turn up every time you ask them to, than 5,000 who are just sat there dormant. So it's engagement size, not collection size. Influence has become the ability to say, look over there, and have someone be engaged enough to look. Our products and our brand, they have become what we look at. Now, they better be good, and they need to be amazing, and they need to look incredible, and they need to follow through on their promises, and they need to have legacy there so that we know that we're in safe hands. But influence has become the ability for an individual to say, look over there. And how do we do that? How do we earn that right to say, look over there? I would suggest that the way that we do it is that we become the translator. You need to become the primary translator of your space. Now, being the primary translator of your space means that you are not the primary technician of your space. We've got so much technical data. No one needs us to provide information anymore. We have access to so much information, more information than we know what to do with. You can literally make a hydrogen bomb, terrifyingly, from videos on YouTube now. We are not short on information. What we are short of, desperately short of, if you're looking for an opportunity, is translators. People who will go out onto the fringes, go out, look at the trends, look at the information, look at what's new, go to the places where I have neither the time nor the bandwidth to go, and bring them back for me. Translate them into language that I can understand in a format that is easily digestible to me. Those are the people that I follow. Those are the people that I listen to in my 8.5 hours a day consuming content. So just quickly, because I'm fascinated, quickly, I want you to turn to the person next to you. I'm not going to give you long. I want you to pick one person that you follow regularly online. And I want you to talk about what do they translate for you, because I guarantee you they translate something important. So very quickly, we'll just up the music. A quick discussion. Who do you follow and why? All right. I really want to ask you some of the answers there, but we're running short on time, so I'm not going to, but I'm so interested to know. Maybe tweet it. I'll go find it. All right, so we need to be the translators. I'm going to give you a good example of this from my own life. As Jill said, I had a baby recently, not so recently, 2 years ago. She's no longer a baby. Who here has kids? Most of you. And who... I'm guessing that for some of you, if not most of you, that journey with your child began one fateful day in hospital. And if you're anything like me, the day went something like this. You've had the baby, they give you the baby, you put the baby in this thing that looks like a spacecraft, and you walk out of the hospital like this, lest anything should touch it. And you get to the front door of the hospital and you look behind you, because you're just like convinced that someone's going to come running over and go, no, hang on. You didn't actually think I was going to let you take that home, did you? Like, do you have any idea what you're doing? Do you even have any food in the fridge? At which point I would say no, because I ate all of it while I was pregnant. But they don't come, weirdly. Surprisingly, they don't come. And you get home and you have this precious thing and you put it on the floor and you're like, okay, just waiting for it to explode in some way, shape or form. And what's one of the first things you have to do when you get your baby home? Feed them. Yeah, you would think, if I had been a better mother, yes. Change a nappy. And so, again, if you're anything like me, I had no idea that small humans come in a variety of sizes. I thought there was just one baby size. And so I had bought the wrong type of nappy. And so I get myself ready, and I go to the supermarket, and this is what I see. Well, this is a very small portion of what I saw. What I saw was aisles and aisles and aisles of nappies in every shape, colour, size known to man. And I am exhausted, and I am sleep deprived, and I am slightly hormonally overwhelmed, and I'm about to burst into tears. And then I suddenly see this. I don't know if you can make it out. Who's heard of Mater? Yeah. Mater Healthcare, Mater Hospitals. I saw that, Mater Nappies. Now you've got to understand that these women, these Mater nurses, these had been the primary translators of my world for the past year. I had gone to them for everything. I would show up to my midwife's appointment with a list of all the things that could kill babies. And I'd be like, look at it. And she'd look at it, she'd be like, forget it, hats, really? Forget it. And then she'd be like, just put it away. There's 3 things you need to think about. The only thing you need to think about as a new mother is these 3 things. Do you have those nailed? And I would take a deep breath, because someone's got it. They were the primary translators of my world. They had out-contributed anybody else in the marketplace. And because of that, I would have bought anything from them. They were my main source of information. I would have followed them and bought anything. And I did buy those nappies. But if they had had baby wash that didn't bring babies out in hives, and baby food, and baby anything else, bottles, dummies that don't ruin their mouths, again, still haven't figured that one out, I would have bought anything. And not only that, not only were they the primary translators of my world, but they had become the students of my world. They had made themselves the students. So not only were they foreseeing the needs that I would have right now, they were predicting my future needs. So they would sit down and they would say, okay, you're going to have this baby, that's a given. Have you thought about what you're going to do afterwards? Because you don't have any family here. Do you have any support? Who's going to come and check on you? There's a local community nurse in your area. She's really nice. You'll like her. I'll give you her number. What about breastfeeding? Have you thought about that? Not everybody finds that so easy. There's a lactation consultant nearby. Again, she's nice. You'll like her. I'll give you her number. Finally, what about this? How are you going to put all that back together? The women are laughing. You're like, I don't know. She's like, okay, well, there's a physio. You should make yourself a physio appointment a few weeks afterwards. Go get yourself checked. Go ask any questions you have. They'll give you some simple exercises to do. They'll stand you in really good stead in the long run. They knew my world, and because of that, they could diversify. They were able to diversify across a multitude of different product ranges. Now, they might have just been recommending those people today, but what happens if Mater then decided to have their own physio services, their own lactation consultants, their own community nurses? Earn that trust, earn that right, and you can diversify into multiple product verticals after that. All right, I'm going to get you to talk again because I'm so determined that you guys are going to leave here with some action points and to be able to discuss in your own worlds. I want you to have a quick chat to the person next to you. What, as a brand, are you translating? And how can you equip your consultants and associates to become the primary translators in their world, in their unique spaces? I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Go for it. This is, I promise you, probably my last time. I hope you're going to continue these conversations when you get back into the offices. So if the eyes and ears of our consumers, of our target markets, if they belong to the translators, then the hearts of our target market belong to the storytellers. The primary translators will get the attention, the epic storytellers will keep the attention. Now, epic storytelling is essential. You need to understand how to do this as brands and as individuals. And say why. It is because we are hardwired for story as human beings. Absolutely hardwired for it. Since caveman times, you get warring tribes that would come together and tell each other stories. Often not even in the same language because it didn't matter. Story is the language of emotion. It's how we trust, it's how we engage. Without story, there is no empathy. I can't feel empathy for you unless I have heard your story, unless I know what it is to walk a mile in your shoes, unless you have told me what a day in your life looks like. I can't feel empathy for you. And without empathy, there is no emotion. And without emotion, there is no action. We only ever take action when fueled by emotion, majority of the time. And because of that, we as brands, we need to learn how to tell epic stories, much better than we are doing currently. Who's seen this? An Inconvenient Truth. Anyone saw it? Few, it's getting a wee bit old now. I still love it. I actually interviewed the person who put it together recently. Fascinating story. Now, Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore, who did an Inconvenient Truth, ex-presidential candidate, unsuccessful presidential candidate, he was also a climate change activist, and he put together this 1-hour movie, this 1-hour film about climate change and what was happening to our planet. Now, bear in mind, prior to that, for the 10 years prior to that, scientists had been trying to get our attention on this topic for 10 years, with stats, with case studies, with fascinating pie charts and graphs and everything else, the best of their ability to try and get us to understand how dire this situation had become. And all of us ignored it, pretty much. Al Gore, he tells one epic story, 1-hour-long epic story, and everywhere it was shown, 50% of people offset their carbon footprint. Now, that is just a complicated way of saying 50% of people took direct financial action as a result of watching An Inconvenient Truth. And that is because he took the story and he made it our story. He talked about what our world was going to look like. He talked about the kind of world our children were going to inherit, the kind of air that we were going to breathe, what was going to happen to the animals that we enjoy, what was going to happen to our homes. Took the story and he made it our story. And that is the power of epic storytelling. Now, if you're sat there, which you might be going, that's all right for him. He's a bit powerful. I'm not. He's got bazillions of dollars in his marketing budget. We don't. He's got all these channels, access to all these channels. He's famous. We don't. Then I just want you to take that story and I want you to just put it in the corner, at least for the next 10 minutes or so. And you can pick it back up before you leave. You can take it home with you, but just for now, leave it, because I think that there's a better question that we can be asking. It's this one.
For a generation of consumers, TV advertising has presented the world in a certain way. The dream vacation, the perfect family, the happy meal, the supermodel. But what happens when anyone can broadcast themselves?
Hey guys, today we're going to talk about L'Oreal's new eyeshadow palette.
We are swimming in a sea of media. So how does a generation raised on this rich diet of media abundance respond to advertising? Do they have different tastes than the generation before? And in this new environment where everyone wants to play a role in the stories that they see, how does that affect the stories that we tell?
At the beginning of this year, I met a gentleman called Ben Jones. I was lucky enough to have a conversation with him. He's the creative director at Google. He also started a section of Google called Unskippable Labs. And Unskippable Labs are the ones who made that video. If you want to watch the end of that video and plenty more videos, go check them out. I can highly recommend it. Basically, the idea of Unskippable Labs is the 5 billion hours of video that gets uploaded to YouTube every day. They study it. And they try and figure out what makes us watch and what makes us disengage. So you know when you watch on YouTube, there's that little button in the bottom right-hand corner that says skip, and you can skip after 5 seconds? They want to figure out what makes us press that button. Or more importantly, not press that button. What kind of adverts or brand messages make us engage so that we don't want to skip them? We'll watch them all the way through. And that's what they've been trying to do. This particular experiment that they ran was around budgets, was around production values. They partnered with L'Oreal and they did 3 different types of advert. One was the highly produced ad, lots of money, traditional celebrity, good lighting, all of that kind of stuff. Second one was quite a prominent blogger who basically walked through the product, still fairly well produced, some decent money spent on it. Third one, they literally got a work experience girl and they put her in a cupboard, a broom cupboard, not an actual cupboard. That would be bad. A broom cupboard. And they filmed her playing with the product, trying it, her journey with it, what she was using it for, how she felt about it, what it felt like. And then they put them all out there and they saw what happened. Now what happened was fascinating. What happened was the glam, the highly produced, the beautiful, got more attention than any of the others. And we already know that, right? That's a traditional model of advertising, that what catches our attention tends to be beautiful things, well-produced things. But here's what's interesting. For those of you who are looking to attract new generations, the younger generations, into this industry, for 90% of the younger generations, what caught their attention was the glam, but the tell, the one in the broom cupboard, that was the one that kept it. That was the one that had the highest level of brand recall, the highest level of engagement. And this is where human beings and brands work hand in hand, where the brand provides the credibility, the beautifully produced, the gorgeous looking things, and then human beings tell the powerful, epic stories about them. And they're equipped to do both. So when I asked Ben about this particular experiment, this is what he said. As the bar raises on the type of stories we can get at any moment of any day, brands have to tell a better story. He called it the Netflix effect, where if you get me in, you show an amazing 5-second advert, you get me in, I'll then be engaged enough to watch, and if it's good enough, I'll watch hours of it. I'll binge watch it. I'll watch 24 hours of Game of Thrones. I will, actually. But you get me in first, and then it's the epic story that keeps me. So I'm going to leave you with just one more thing to think about, and that's collaboration. You have amazing minds here. I know because I spoke to some of them. Amazing people, amazingly passionate people. And it's in collaborating with those people. So it's firstly getting clarity, becoming the translator, learning how to tell epic stories, out-contributing everybody else. And it is then by collaborating with these people in your organizations that you're going to get the kind of amazing results that you know that you can get. And so the average network of an individual in your organization is 600 times larger than the network of the organization itself. So that is to say that the amount of contacts your brand has, the amount of people that follow your brand, every individual in your organization has a network that's probably 600 times larger than that. And yet, only 2% of anybody that works within a brand ever shares any company content. 2%. Now that is a massive disconnect. It might be higher in direct selling, but even if it's 10%, that is a huge disconnect. And these are people that are passionate about what you do, that have a vested interest in its success. We need to figure out how to create epic stories that people are going to want to share. Because if people that work with us, they don't want to share them, then we don't stand much of a chance of getting our customers to share what we're about. IBM had this problem 10 years ago. It was during the middle of the huge global recession. They had very low staff engagement. Customers were asking them some big, big questions, and they were just stuck. They didn't have any answers. And so what they did was they took out some full-page ads in the New York Times and a variety of different other major newspapers, and with those full-page ads, they just put out ideas. This is how we think that technology can solve some of our biggest problems. This is how we think technology could fix this industry. This is how we think technology can answer some of these questions. Just went out there with ideas. Huge contribution. No marketing, huge contribution. They called it Smarter Planet. And this is where it was really smart. They got all those ideas from everybody within their organization. They went out into their organization and they pulled out the epic stories and the passion and the ideas, the experience, from master inventors down to systems engineers. And they shone a light on them, and they recorded videos with them, and they put out those ideas, and they attributed them to them. They then went out to their customers, and they said, look, we're doing this thing. These are some of the questions. You guys are thought leaders in your field. Do you want to help us solve them, and we'll promote whatever we find? And the customers were like, yeah, we've got to figure this out anyway. We'll do this with you. As a direct result of this campaign, IBM have attributed $3 billion of revenue as a direct result of this. You know why? Because 430,000 employees shared it, because they were passionate about it, because they co-created it, and they collaborated on it. Their share price rose 64% that year, in a market average of 14. That is massive. That's the power of collaboration. It's the power of epic stories. Now this new age of influence is an age of human-driven networks. And you are an industry of human-driven networks. It is an age of entrepreneurship, the rise of the gig economy. You are an industry of entrepreneurial spirit. It is the age of epic storytelling. You guys have been telling stories for decades. You've had an amazing year. If you can get here with just tapping a little bit into this new age of influence, imagine what the next chapter of direct selling is going to look like if you harness its power. You guys are set up more so than any other industry I've probably ever spoken to. So I want to leave you with this. This is Bibiana. Bibiana is my personal trainer. She's 5 foot and nothing. She's a Muay Thai fighter. She's bald. She is Chinese. And she has taught me everything that I know about showing up and about being match fit. And what she has taught me is that you don't just show up for title fights. You don't just show up when it counts. You show up every day. You figure out where the weaknesses are and you work on them. You figure out where the gaps are and you plug them. You show up every day and you train. You get match fit. And literally, just a couple of weeks ago, absolutely happened. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Centennial Park training with her. This is why I put this slide in. And we were training and we were boxing. And I said to her, I'm a bit unsteady on my feet. We're on grass. A bit unsteady on my feet. Can we find some concrete, just somewhere where I can get a bit more of a foothold? And she looked at me and she said, the people that come out on top, they don't wait for the perfect circumstances. They don't wait for the perfect set of rules. They don't wait for perfect. They don't wait to figure this out perfectly. They jump in, they show up, they move, and they adapt. And that was a massive lesson for me, and I want to share it with you here today. Because those who come out on top over the next few years will be those who showed up when it wasn't perfect, when they hadn't quite figured it out yet, and they moved fast and they adapted. Because if there is one thing that I can tell you after all these years doing this, it is this: that influence doesn't live out there. It's an inside job. Thank you very much for your time.